You'll find our text today right in the middle of your Bible. It's Psalm 3. Or if you have your electronic device, it's on the middle button. That's safe enough, isn't it? This past Tuesday morning, I woke up at 3:57, and that's the time I wake up on Sundays. And it hit me. I said, this is Sunday. And then I got anxious and said, my sermon's not ready. I said, oh no. And then it's Tuesday. And I thought, oh man, I'm so grateful. I don't know if that's ever happened to you or not, but sometimes my anxieties have anxieties, as Charlie Brown said. And I thought, since the week got started off like that I probably needed to see a counselor. So I thought about going to this one that you're about to see on this video. So if you'll take a look and listen.
Dr. Switzer?
Yes, come in. I'm just washing my hands.
I'm Catherine Bigman. Janet Carlisle referred me.
Oh, yes. Fear of being buried alive in a box.
Yes, that's me. Should I lay down?
Oh, no, we don't do that anymore. Just have a seat. And let me tell you a bit about our billing. I charge $5 for the first 5 minutes, and then absolutely nothing after that. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Too good to be true, as a matter of fact.
Well, I can almost guarantee you that our session won't last the full 5 minutes. Now, we don't do any insurance billing, so you would either have to pay in cash or by check.
Wow, okay.
And I don't make change.
All right.
And go.
Go.
Well,
What?
Tell me about the problem that you wish to address.
Oh, okay. Well, I have this fear of being buried alive in a box. I start thinking about being buried alive, and I begin to panic.
Has anyone ever tried to bury you alive in a box?
No, but truly thinking about it does make my life horrible. I mean, I can't go through tunnels or be in an elevator or in a house, anything boxy.
So what you're saying is you're claustrophobic.
Yes, that's it.
All right, well, let's go, Catherine. I'm going to say 2 words to you right now. I want you to listen to them very, very carefully. Then I want you to take them out of the office with you and incorporate them into your life.
Well, shall I write them down?
If it makes you comfortable, it's just 2 words. We find most people can remember them.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay, here they are. Stop it!
I'm sorry?
Stop it!
Stop it?
Yes, S-T-O-P, new word, I-T.
So, what are you saying?
It's funny. I say 2 simple words, and I cannot tell you the amount of people who say exactly the same thing you're saying. I mean, this is not Yiddish, Catherine. This is English. Stop it.
So, I should just stop it.
There you go. I mean, you don't want to go through life being scared of being buried alive in a box, do you? I mean, that sounds frightening.
It is.
Then stop it.
I can't. I mean, it's been with me since childhood.
No, we don't go there. Just stop.
So I should just stop being afraid of being buried alive in a box.
You got it. Good go. Well, it's only been 3 minutes, so that will be $3.
Actually, I only have a 5, so.
Well, I don't make change.
Then I guess I'll take the full 5 minutes.
Fine. All right. Well, what other problems would you like to address?
I'm bulimic. I stick my fingers down my throat.
Stop it! Nut of some kind? Don't do that.
But I'm compelled to. My mom used to call me fatty.
No, we don't go there.
But I've been having this dream.
No, we don't go there either.
But my horoscope did say.
We definitely don't go there. Just stop it. What else?
Well, I have self-destructive relationships with men.
Stop it! You want to be with a man, don't you?
Yes.
Well, then stop it. Don't be such a big baby.
I wash my hands a lot.
That's all right.
It is?
I wash my hands all the time. There's a lot of germs out there. Yeah, don't worry about that one.
I'm afraid to drive.
Well, stop it! How are you going to get around? Get in the car and drive, you kook. Stop it!
You stop it! You stop it!
What's the problem, Catherine?
I don't like this. I don't like this therapy at all. You're just telling me to stop it.
And you don't like that?
No, I don't.
So you think we're moving too fast? Is that it?
Yes. Yes, I do.
All right, then let me give you 10 words that I think will clear everything up for you. You want to get a pad and a pencil for this one?
All right.
Are you ready? All right, here are the 10 words. Stop it, or I'll bury you alive in a box!
Well, after somebody showed me that video, I decided not to go to him. Well, I'm trying to laugh a truth into us that actually anxiety is not a laughing matter. It really isn't. Let me give you a few statistics here to sort of set what we're talking about today in context. Here are some of the consequences of lack of treatment for those who have mental illness, anxiety included. Serious mental illness costs America $193 billion in lost earnings every year. Let that sink in. $193 billion in lost earnings every year. Mood disorders, major depression, bipolar disorder are the third most common cause of hospitalization in the U.S. for both youth and adults ages 18 to 44. There is an increased risk of chronic medical conditions. Adults in the U.S. with serious mental issues or illness die an average 25 years earlier than others, largely due to treatable medical conditions. Over 1/3 of students with mental health conditions ages 14 to 21 and older who are being served by special education drop out. It has the highest dropout rate of any disability group. Suicide, which anxiety is so much a part of suicide, is the third leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 14 and the second leading cause of death for people ages 15 to 24. More than 90% of children ages 15 to 24, more than 90% of children who die by suicide have a mental health condition. And this one touches a lot of us because of the military. Every day, 18 to 22 veterans die by suicide. Every day. Well, let's think of a few more things about this. Anxiety is the most common mental illness in the U.S. and affects around 40 million people. adults 18 years of older, which is about 18% of our population. 40 million of us are struggling with anxiety. It's highly treatable, but only about 36% of those of us who suffer get treatment. There's something about that we don't want to have to admit this, I guess. Anxiety sufferers are 3 to 5 times more likely to go to the doctor and 6 times more likely to be hospitalized for psychiatric disorders than those who don't have anxiety. Where does this come from? Well, it comes from a complex set of factors: genetics, brain chemistry, personality, life events. Those are some of the risk factors that are included. And it's not uncommon for anxiety sufferers to also suffer from depression, or vice versa. Nearly 1/2 of those diagnosed with depression are also diagnosed with anxiety disorders. Which brings us to our text today, Psalm chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. This particular psalm is the first to have a little superscription written above the text. Take a look at your Bible and see if that's the case. It'll say something like this: a psalm of David when he fled from Absalom, his son, or something to that effect. Does that, most of your translations have that? This is the first psalm that has it. There are not that many psalms that have these superscriptions. And the reason it's there is to give us an indication of the historical background to what we're reading. In this particular case, this comes from a time in the life of David, who was the king of Israel, who was past middle age in his life, and his third oldest son, Absalom, saw this as an opportunity to take over the kingdom. And over a period of years, he began subtly to draw people's affection away from his dad, David, and to himself. And then at the right moment, Absalom came to Jerusalem with an army to take over the city. And David, when he heard about that, he and his people left. They left Jerusalem and took out for the desert. This is the second time in David's life when he's on the run. His earlier years, he was on the run from King Saul. King Saul wanted to kill him. And now it's coming from his own family, his own son. And he writes, or he experiences this psalm, what he writes here, during that time of running away from his own son, who is after him. And so that's the background in a nutshell. You can read about it in the Old Testament. It covers about 4 chapters, 2 Samuel 15, 16, 17, and 18. I'll let you read the details at another time. But here's what he says. Let's read this with that background in mind. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. And then you'll notice a little word that says Selah. Does your translations have that word? Yeah. This most likely refers to a musical instrument that plays at this point in the psalm. It's sort of like a transition from the spoken word to another set of spoken words by music. It's like when you go to an opera or something. There's speaking parts and there's musical parts. And this would be a musical part, an interlude, we might call it. And then the next section begins. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. That would be from Jerusalem, which he has vacated. He's not there anymore, but God is there. Selah. interlude, quiet music. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek, and you break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Now let's take that little Selah and divide this up, talking about anxiety. The first two verses then talk about the reality of it, the reality of anxiety. We are definitely living in a time in our country when there is a lot of anxiety. And notice David says in verse 1, O Lord, how many are my foes? The anxieties are many. They are in abundance, as well as stress. And they are active. In verse 1, it says, they are rising up against me. Not only are there a lot of different ones, but there are a lot of them, and they are rising up. And then in verse 2, he says, they are saying about my soul. Now, I don't know if your translation has the word soul. It should have. It's the Hebrew word nephesh, which is literally soul. And in the Hebrew concept of man, man does not have a soul. He is a soul. He is a complete being. And the soul refers to the most deeply held beliefs, needs, desires, and hopes that we have. And the object of stress and anxiety is to seek to influence and control over us at the deepest level, our trust in God. There is no hope for you, says your stress and your anxiety. I don't know if there used to be a comedy show some years ago called Seinfeld. I don't know if any of you have ever watched that or not. But it's a group of singles and their life. And there's a little restaurant or salad bar or sandwich place, soup place. And they go there occasionally to get soup and a sandwich. But there's a guy that works there, and they call him the soup Nazi. And if you tick him off in any way, here's what he says: no soup for you. That's what David's enemies are saying. There is no hope for you, even in God. You see, that's what anxiety begins to work on, and stress. It tries to separate you from your relationship with God. No salvation for you. No deliverance for you. It's accusatory. So these anxieties, they are in abundance. They are active, and they are accusatory. Well, verses 3 and 4, the next Selah section, is the response to anxiety. He gives two, and then I will make mention of another. The first is trust. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. Here he's talking about his trust in God. And he says three things about him. He says, you are a shield about me. Now, the shield for the typical Jewish soldier was a round shield, and they had some straps on the back of it. And so the soldier would slide his hand and his arm into that, and he would hold his shield like this. It was designed to cover from your stomach up, that you could move your shield up and down for whatever was coming at you. And so it was called a magen, M-A-G-E-N. And what is interesting here is that he says that you are a shield about me. For that physical shield only covered this part of you, the front of you. But he says, oh Lord, you are a shield all around me, front and back. We might say, God's got us covered. He's our shield. He is our glory. This word glory had to do with influence, weight. We think of somebody in the community being an influential person. We would say they had kabod, which is the word for heavy or influence. And it refers to dignity and honor. And he says, you are my glory. You are my dignity and my honor, because that is what is being assailed by our anxieties and our fears and our stresses. They are designed to disgrace us and to dishonor us. And our hope is in the unimpeachable honor and dignity supplied by God alone. You are my glory. And the third thing he says, you are the lifter up of my head. When in reading that background, you'll find that David and his men, as they left the city, they left with their heads bowed low. And that's what anxiety and stress does to us. It can have physical reactions. Let me mention a couple of them to you. Could be muscle tension, headaches, rapid breathing, fast heartbeat, sweating like I'm doing now. Preaching always makes me anxious. Dizziness, change in appetite, trouble sleeping. And some of the emotional reactions can be feelings of impending doom. You know, we sort of laughed at the video. That girl had a fear of being buried alive in a box. We thought, you know, that's irrational. But for her, it was real. Panic or nervousness, especially in social settings, difficulty concentrating, restlessness. Those are some of the physical and mental and emotional things that come with stress. And there they were with their head bowed low. And David, after he realizes that God is his shield and his glory, he's also the lifter of his head. And when in the ancient world, when a dignitary or a king or someone recognized you and your head was lifted up, it was a sign of acceptance and approval. God is the one who accepts you. God is the one who approves of you, not your anxieties and not your stresses. There's another response he has. It's prayer. Oh, how vital prayer is when we are being assailed by stress and anxiety. Another time in the history of Israel, when they were surrounded by an army, the whole nation was scared to death, even the king. And here was what they said. "O our God," 2 Chronicles 20:12, "will you not execute judgment on them? For we are powerless against this great enemy that is coming against us. We do not know what to do, but our eyes are upon you." That's prayer. Prayer in action. God, we don't know what to do. If you've ever been engulfed by anxiety and stress, there will be times when you say, I don't know what to do. But here's what we can do. We put our eyes on Him. Philippians 4:6 says, "Don't be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God." Prayer is a vital response to anxiety. Let me add one more, because I've been asked about this time and time again. What about doctors and medicine? Well, thankfully, the Bible doesn't see them as mutually exclusive. Sometimes Christians put it that way. It's either this or that. It's one or the other. The Bible sees them as both and. Let me give you an example. In James chapter 5, verse 13 and 14, "Is anyone among you suffering? Let him pray. Is anyone cheerful? Let him sing praise. Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. That's very important. Notice what book of the Bible it comes out of, the book of James. These were early Jewish Christians, and they continued some of their officers that they had in their synagogues. They called them elders. And in the ancient world, especially among the Jews, elders did double duty. They were both involved in religious matters and some medical matters as well. And so what James is saying is it's prayer and medicine together. It's not mutually exclusive. So spreading of oil was one of the most common medicinal practices in the ancient world. Do you remember the story of the Good Samaritan? Remember going down from Jerusalem to Jericho? What happened to him? He got jumped, right? He got jumped and got beat up, left half dead. And this priest came along. He went on by the side. This Levite came along. He didn't do anything. They had meetings to go to. But this Samaritan, he stopped and he went over to that side of the road and he looked at this guy and he picked him up, and you know what he did to him? He poured in oil and wine. Oil to soothe the bruises and the hurts, and wine not to drink, but to cleanse his wounds. Oil was used that way in medical practices, and still today, you check a lot of our medicines, oil is a product of it, or part of it. Jesus, his disciples in Mark chapter 6, verse 13, anointed with oil many who were sick, and he healed them, or they healed them. If anxiety becomes the rule rather than the exception in your life, prayer and medication is warranted. Consulting both God and a good doctor is wise. Remember, Paul had Luke with him on most of his journeys. And you know who Luke was? He was a doctor. Paul called him a beloved physician. Paul had been beat up and left for dead. He'd been shipwrecked. There's no telling the anxieties and the stresses he had in his life. Prayer and a good doctor helped him. Then the last section, the last Selah. Here are some of the results over anxiety that he gives in verses 5 through 8. He says, first of all, I lay down and slept, and I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. Here's one of the results of anxiety that's been conquered. Confident rest. Confident rest. Jesus says in Matthew 11:28, come to me, all you who are weary and heavily burdened down. That's what stress and anxiety does to us. It burdens us down. He says, come to me and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. Another result is neutralizing fear. In verse 6, notice what he says. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. To neutralize something is to counteract with an opposing action or force. 2 Timothy 1:7, Paul said to Timothy, for God has not given us a spirit of fear. That's the anxiety. That's the stress. But here's the counteracting force: power, love, and self-control. 2 Timothy 1:7 neutralizes fear. And then in verse 7, and this is part of the passage that causes problems because it sounds vengeful. Let's look at it closer. For you strike all my enemies on the cheek. Striking an enemy was an insult. Mostly it was public, and it was done by the slapping with the back of the hand. It was meant to disgrace. What he's saying is, enemies are disgraced. When anxiety and stress is given the door, there is like the striking of the enemy on the cheek. And the next one, you break the teeth of the wicked. Now, are we supposed to go around breaking people's teeth? No. This is what God does in the midst of our anxieties and our stresses as He vanquishes them in our life. It's used of an animal that's got prey in its mouth. It's got its teeth clenched around it like a wolf has got something. And the teeth being broken, he has to drop the prey. He can't hold on to it anymore. And God works that way for us and our enemies. Anxiety loses its power to disgrace us because it has been disarmed. And then the last, here's another result. There is deliverance. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. Now, the word salvation can connote also victory and deliverance. And most of the time when we see this word salvation, it often refers to salvation by grace through faith. It's being converted to Christ. Here it has more the context of victory or deliverance. That victory over anxiety is possible. And when it does, it comes from the Lord Almighty. And further, this victory is meant for blessing, not only to the individual, but to others as well. God intends to bring blessing from the jaws of anxiety. 2 weeks ago, if you were here, you remember we had a group called Teen Challenge from Atlanta. And one of the fellows who gave his testimony was Mike Braswell. He was the guy over here playing the violin, if you remember him, white-haired guy. Well, when he got back to Atlanta, he wrote a story about his experience here that weekend. And you did not know this, but a few of us did, that Eddie Herring's brother took, I believe it was his brother, relative, took them deep-sea fishing. And the story that he wrote out of that is called Face Your Shark. And the reason for that is because as they were out there and they were fishing, as they were pulling up fish, it would come up either completely gone or half-eaten or something. And the captain figured it out. He said, "We've got a shark after us." And sure enough, they baited up, get ready to hook a shark, and they did. And Mike Braswell said, I want to try to bring it in. He didn't know what he was getting in for. But he settled into that chair and he started working that rod. And slowly, 2 hours later, he pulled that shark in. The captain first thought it was about 7 feet long. But when they got it up to the boat, it was 10 foot long. It was a bull shark. And Mike said he was just worn out after that experience. His body was aching. And then he wrote a story about it called Facing Your Shark. Now remember, Mike has been deep in anxiety and addiction in his life. And he writes this story. He makes parallels for the captain of the boat to Jesus, and the shark to his fears and anxieties. I won't read you the whole story. In fact, if you want the whole story, email me and I'll send you a copy of it. It's worthy of publication, it really is. Here's the end of it. Here's what he wrote. We often let the enemy rob us of our blessings, and so often the reason for our loss is rooted in fear. Or we may not see him, and he may rob us a number of times before we realize what is going on. Either way, it is up to us, with help from the Lord, to put a stop to it, regardless the challenge. Once we identify the enemy, we must begin our steps to overcome. We may have to sacrifice something that looks good in the present for the greater gain of the future. Once we get a line on the enemy, once we have him where we want him, we must fight with everything we have. We must align our will with that of the Father, the captain. And together we must push through the struggle that is our own. We cannot pass it off to the next man. We may accept an encouraging word or a helpful dose of water, and he puts in parentheses the Word of God, to replenish what may have been used. But the battle is our own. We may feel alone in it at times because we can't see him, but through faith we know that he is there and he is watching out for us. We will become tired. We will become sore. We will sweat it out at times, but we overcome. At times we may think we are near the end, only to slip in pride, thinking we have it beat. Another lesson, a little more struggle, but we're learning about our enemy and also of our resolve and how best to be victorious, not only in this battle, but in those to come. We may think our enemy to be one thing, but then as the fight draws closer to us, we find out that it may be much larger than we anticipated. This should bring hope rather than discouragement, for we realize we are capable of facing greater giants than we imagine we can face. God allows our battles into our lives to teach us something and to help us increase our faith in him. He never leaves us, even when we can't see him. And then he has just 5 little brief statements. Here they are. Face your sharks, overcome, let it go, rest in him. Even a big shark is still just a fish.